All right, just a couple of things to pick up from last week. So there was a whole discussion. Of course, I misremembered. I guess that's that new word that the Iraqi attack, it happened not on Shavuos, but as many people pointed out, on Erev Shavuos on June 5th. I do remember, I think I remember, I was walking to shul with my father when we heard about it. So I thought I was walking to shul on Yom Tov. I must have been walking Erev Yom Tov. Okay, whatever it is. But my sister pointed out that that week was also Parshat Bahalotcha. So I said, that's really strange because we never read Bahalotcha, or almost never read Bahalotcha on the Shabbos after Shavuot. We always read Naso. The Gemara says you're supposed to read Bechukotai. You're supposed to read the klalot, the curses or the admonitions in Vayikra, Parsha Bechukotai before Shavuos. That's kind of quote Matan Torah. You got to warn us if we don't keep the Torah. We want to read that before Shavuos, and the Tochacha, the admonitions in Dvarim, in Parsha Kitavo, before Rosh Hashanah, before Yom Adin. So before Shavuos, before Yom Adin, we want to read these big warnings that you better keep the Torah. Tosfot already points out we never do that. We never read it the week before. We read it the week before the week before. And Tosfot says, we don't want to go into Rosh Hashanah Shavuos. We like to be optimistic. So we don't want to go in mamish the Shabbos before reading about you're going to burn and things are going to be terrible and all the terrible curses written in the Torah. So we postpone it by a week. So that's really the sort of the idea. Now, probably those things were read not as I wouldn't say probably, I'd say definitely those things when the Gemara, when the Mishnah, when the Gemara talked about it, the Megillah talked about it, it wasn't read as Parshat HaShavua. There was no Parshat HaShavua, or if there was Parshat HaShavua, it's every 3 years. We have the custom of reading, 1 week. Simchas Torah every year is only in the Middle Ages. So maybe less than 1,000 years old. So when the Gemara says you read the Arba Parshat, all these things that you read, that was Parshat HaShavua. They didn't have like Parshat HaShavua and then Maftir, but that's just to be aware of. But we set up our Torah reading. So Parshat HaShavua, Bamidbar or Vayikra is before Shavuos, and then Kitavo is before Rosh Hashanah, a week or 2 weeks before, really. And then, of course, they tie up the week before is Bamidbar because the Torah is given in a desert and make the desert bloom. And I mentioned last week, Naso is the longest parsha of the year. So right after Shavuos, but those are really after the fact. You can make a drush almost out of everything, so very nice ideas. But now it does happen, of course, we realize, I assume most people realize that Parshat HaShavua is a chutz la'aretz. When they develop Parshat HaShavua, it's developed for people were living outside of Israel. There was a small community in Israel. So occasionally, as we know, we have this when the last day of Pesach or Shavuos, but especially on Pesach is on Shabbos, the 8th day is on Shabbos. So in Israel, they'll always read a parsha ahead of us. And for reasons that actually bother me, I've spoken about it before, it actually bothers me that we don't catch up to Matot Maseh. I understand in the 1200s, who cares? There were 4 people who traveled between Israel and Chutz La'aretz between Pesach and Tisha B'Av. Matot Maseh is the week before, again, the week before Tisha B'Av. Now, how many people traveled? You can count them on one hand. Today, I mean, not today, unfortunately, but hopefully soon today, 1 million people there's no doubt there are 1 million Jews who travel between Israel and Chutz La'aretz between Pesach and Tisha B'Av. So that means either that means they miss a parsha and they hear one parsha twice. I think that's insane. I'm sorry, and the rabbi should actually change it. Who cares that they did? And I've asked people. I don't, people are resistant. The traditional community is resistant to change. So when we only catch up when the last day of Pesach is on Shabbos in Chutz, we were off for literally 3 months, for more than 3 months, the laning. So then when that happens, Israel will read Parshat Naso before Shavuos. So why in 1981 did we in Chutz La'aretz I read Naso before Shavuos? So thank you, Tova. So I looked up when the world's going on here. So basically, turns out again, I learned the most from our students. When you have 2 things come together, when Rosh Hashanah is on a Thursday, Friday, and that means when Rosh Hashanah is on it, so the next Shabbos will be Parshat Shvuah, and it's a leap year. So when you have Rosh Hashanah on Thursday, Friday, and it's a leap year, there are 39 weeks. You can count them. I actually did that. I went back to the 1981 calendar, I put it online, the Lubavitch, calendar 1981, 8081, and you count the weeks. I actually went and I counted there are 39 weeks. So there are 39 weeks between Rosh Hashanah and and Shavuot. So one of those weeks, Shabbos is Yom Kippur. When Rosh Hashanah is on Thursday, Friday, Yom Kippur is on Shabbos. And then one week on Sukkot, the Chol Hamoed Sukkot, you don't do Parshat HaShavua, and Chol Hamoed Pesach, you don't do Parshat HaShavua. So that leaves you 36 weeks for Parshat HaShavua. Now, if you add up the weeks, there are 12 Parshiot in Bereshit, there are 11 Parshiot in Shemot, there are 11 Parshiot in Vayikra. So that's 12 and 22 is 34, right? So that's grade three math. And then that leaves you 2 more weeks. So you're stuck. You have to do Bamidbar and Neso before Shavuos. So that's what happened in 1981. For those who remember, Rosh Hashanah was on Thursday, Friday. It was a leap year. So there's just extra weeks. And I also, in discovering this, I never knew this before. Although I don't know that historically it works. I have to think about that a little more. What's the first parsha that we can actually double up? When it's not a leap year, we double up. And usually in a leap year, we double up Matad Masay. It's almost never that Matad Masay is split. Once in a while, I don't remember the whole configuration that has to happen. But what's the first parsha we can double up when we have to double up? Anybody? We don't double anything in Bereshit. Who will want to double up in Bereshit? It's so exciting every week. I don't want to do two Parshas in one week. Truma Tetzaveh, that would be great, but that's never doubled.
Azriya Mitzora.
I'm sorry?
Azriya Mitzora.
Vayaka Pekude, but close. Vayaka Pekude. And this year, whenever it's a non-leap year, like this year, always you do three double Parshot in 4 weeks. Tazriya Mitzora, Achrei Mot Kedoshim, and Bahar Bechukotai. So that's very strange. Like, why do we, you got to be like really up on the Parshiot. You're flipping through. Why don't we like divide, by Vayikra Tzav or Truma Tetzaveh? They go together. Why? So what claim I have to really think about this more is that they didn't know the problem is Parshat Shua started afterwards. So, but let's ignore the historical anachronism here. I just thought it was an interesting thing, but I don't know the historical anachronism. Um, the calendar was when we did not have a fixed calendar, when we used to do the calendar based on this, witnesses coming. So you often, I would say probably always, they did not decide in advance. You had to decide by the 29th day of Adar. That's the Gemara says Chizkiyahu did it on the 30th day of Adar, which could be the 30th day of Adar, the first of Nisan. That's already too late. You cannot decide. By the 29th of Adar, you have to decide if it's going to be a leap year because they would wait. There are all kinds of things. Weather patterns. That was one of the things they took into consideration. How cold it's going to be in the base of Mikdash on Yom Kippur. Fascinating. That was one of the considerations. So they would decide as late as they can. So you never knew if it was going to be a leap year or not. So you never knew if you needed more parshiot. So they didn't want to double up any parshiot till Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is kind of cool. And Vayaka Pekude is the first time that can happen. I thought that was really interesting. I just don't think it's correct because the Parshat HaShavua began only after, unless I'm mistaken, only after we had a fixed calendar. But who cares? In the Ein Sholim Al Hadrash, whatever. I don't know. But that's what he explained. So therefore, we do it, and we want to get to Bamidbar or the Tochacha Bechukotai before Shavuos, right? That's how we started this whole discussion. So you have to punch in the double Parshiot very quickly from the Rosh Chodesh Nisan till Shavuot. So you got to double up in Vayikra. So that's very interesting. I don't know if anybody has any other insights. Please let me know. But that's why in 1981 Bahalotcha was read even in Chutz La'aretz after the week after Shavuot, and Nasa was read before Shavuot. Okay, that's point number one. Number two, I mentioned at the end that we're talking about. I don't know how I forget how I got into it. The Rav's beautiful eulogy for his mechatenis, the Rebbetzin of Talmud. That's Yitzchak Tursky's mother. The Rav. The interesting. interesting chutin, like the Rav came from a classic non-Hasidic Misnagdish family. Like, you can't get more un-Hasidic than Rav Soloveitchik, the Soloveitch family. And here you have the Chernobyl or whatever, the Talmud Rebbe, married, the kids marrying each other. They have, and they say that on when the Rav's wife passed away. So Tara Chorsky and the Chorsky or the Rav moved into, I don't know who went to whose house, but the Rav lived with his daughter. Um, so on Sukkot, of course, the Rav would sit in a sukkah as the halacha demands you do. And of course, the Rabbi Twersky wouldn't sit in a sukkah as the Hasidic custom demands you do. No, no. So that whatever. But the Rav gave a beautiful hesped. I'm just curious, how many people have read the hesped?
Hmm.
Yocheved. Yeah, I knew Yocheved would have read it. Anybody else? Okay. So I
I
just have
sent
to
a
share.
link last week.
Right, you sent the link, and
Yeah.
that's right now. So I'm going to share it right now,
Okay.
a little bit, and we're not going to read the whole thing. That would take the whole shear, but it really is worth reading. It really is phenomenal. So just let me share it here. What happened here? Go here. Okay, so this is in tradition. It was published with a number of other essays of the Rav. It's 1977, I believe. I don't know why it's not going to stop. Okay, and this is Hesped for a tribute to the Rebbitzin of Talmud. I believe it was given at her Shloshim. So, okay, he has to ask. Here, I'll just start here. We'll get to the good part. I mean, it's all good, but I wish to ask a strange question, which a must address. It's I don't know, my cursor won't let me go over. I guess the way it's done, so you just have to follow. Who was the Rebbitzin of Talmud was snatched away from us so quickly? Okay, it's almost a paradoxical, almost absurd question. The Reb's English is so like amazing. We all met her on many different occasions. We always were under the impression that we knew her well. Apparently, this assumption on our part was just an illusion, a mirage. In the course of the past 30 days, the Shloshim period of mourning, the truth began to dawn on us that actually we did not know her at all. That the woman we met and greeted every morning, good morning, Rebbitzin, was a cryptic figure, a kind of mystery. It is self-evident that now we are curious to find out who she was. Now we ask ourselves, who was the woman who never omitted Tefillah B'tzibur? Very interesting, who never could catch up with the congregation, stuffing at her own pace, and who continued in the Tzibur, very interesting, and who continued to recite her prayers long after the worshipers have left the synagogue. If you should address this embarrassing question to me, I would answer she was an unusual woman. Okay, blah blah blah. Said the Rebbitzin was qualified to belong to a mysterious society. What is the name of that mysterious society? It is the Masorah Society, which was founded by Moses. Also, very interesting how he uses Moses and not Moshe at the dawn of our history, and which at the point of eschatological fulfillment of our history will be joined by the King Messiah. What characterizes that society? An unqualified dedication to learning and teaching. Okay, then let's skip a little bit. People are mistaken People are mistaken in thinking there's only one Masorah and one Masorah community, the community of the fathers. It is not true. We have two Masorah, two traditions, two communities, two Shalshalot HaKabbalah, the Masorah community of the fathers and that of the mothers. Thus so shall say to the house of Jacob, Kotomru lebeit Yaakov, v'taked lebeit Israel, and tell the children of Israel, i.e. the women and the men. Hear, my son, the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the teaching of thy mother. Shema b'ni musar avicha, v'al titosh torat imecha. Notice the Torah is on the mother. The musar, the admonition, how to live your life, is on the father. The Torah is on your mother. Okay, counsel the old king. What is the difference between these two Masorot? What is the distinction between Musar, Avika, and Torat Imecha? Let us explore what one learns from the father, one learns from the mother. One learns much from the father. How to read a text, the Bible or the Talmud, how to comprehend, how to analyze, how to conceptualize, how to classify, how to infer, how to apply. One also learns from father what to do and what not to do, what is morally right and what is morally wrong. Father teaches the son the discipline of thought. We spoke about that last week, Yitzchak, right? Yitzchak ben Abraham, the scoffers were saying that, give me a break. You can't raise Yitzchak. Yitzchak wasn't the father. That's ridiculous. If Sarah is the mother, obviously Yitzchak can be Abraham could be the father. We said the father, the discipline of halacha, that you can't pass on. The gefilte fish and the Pesach Seder, everybody loves that. So even, the Sarah part, that's, so the father It's the discipline of thought and the discipline of action. Father's tradition is an intellectual moral one. That is what is identified with musar, which is the biblical term for discipline. What is Torat Imecha? What kind of a Torah does the mother pass on? I admit that I am not able to define precisely the Masoretic role of the Jewish mother. Only by circumscription, I hope to be able to explain it. Permit me to draw upon my own experience. I used to have long conversations with my mother. In fact, it was a monologue rather than a dialogue. She talked, and I happened to overhear. What did she talk about? I must use a halachic term in order to answer this question. She talked to me inyana dioma, dealings of the day. I used to watch her arranging the house in honor of a holiday. I used to see her recite prayers. I used to see her recite the Siddur every Friday night, and I still remember the nostalgic tune. I learned from her very much. Most of all, I learned that Judaism expresses itself not only in formal compliance with the law, but also in a living experience. She taught me that there's a flavor, a scent, and warmth to mitzvot. I learned from her the most important thing in life. This is amazing. I learned from her the most important thing in life, to feel the presence of the Almighty and the gentle pressure of His hand resting on my frail shoulders. Without her teaching, which were quite often were transmitted to me in silence, I would have grown up a soulless being, dry and insensitive. The laws of Shabbat, for instance, were passed on to me by my father. They are part of Musari Bicha. The Shabbat, as a living entity, as a queen, was revealed to me by my mother. It is a part of Torat Imecha. The fathers knew much about the Shabbat. The mothers lived the Shabbat, experienced her presence, and perceived her beauty and splendor. The fathers taught generations how to observe the Shabbat. Mothers taught generations how to greet the Shabbat and how to enjoy her 24-hour presence. And I find that such a beautiful tribute, and I suggest you read the whole article, but it's really moving. The Rab does a lot of this, where he has typologies, and obviously, and the mother can sometimes do the father's role. It's not like not that, but that's the Rab developed this thing. But it's a beautiful idea, and okay, it came up last week. I figure I would share that with you. Okay, let's get back to Sim Shalom. So Rabbi Alman mentioned that that the minhag in Israel is to say Sim Shalom Shabbos at Mincha. I don't remember that, but whatever. I'm sure that is correct. I don't know if that's 100% widespread minhag or whatever. Okay, so I just let me. Okay, so that's
Sure, it says on Shabbat to say Shabbat Mincha. It says
right.
Shabbat Israel.
Right. So that is, I mean, not okay. Obviously, not everybody agrees that. The way we explained it last week, it doesn't quote unquote make sense. So we explained last week that Sim Shalom is the continuation of Birkas Kohanim. It's really that's what the Kohanim did. Vayasem L'cha Shalom, Yisa Hashem Panav Elecha V'Yasem L'cha Shalom, and then Shalom, Sim Shalom Tov. So it's a continuation, and it may have actually been said by the Kohanim. This may be what the Kohanim said. If that's correct, then obviously you would only say it when you had Birkas Kohanim. So why is there a minhag to say it? So thank you. I looked up to the Otzar Tefillah quotes that I found a little interesting. Maybe there are other explanations, but the only explanation I saw was that because we say in Sim Shalom Torat Chayim, that we ask God or we thank God. We'll come back to that in a moment. Who gave us a Torat Chayim, a living Torah, and they say it's that since we read the Torah at Mincha, we sort of want to. We just read the Torat Chaim 5 minutes ago, so we're going to express it in Sim Shalom. No, I don't know if there's another explanation, but I think there are different customs. If I'm not mistaken, Rav Soloveitchik only said Sim Shalom, never said Shalom Rab, even at Mariv. I don't think anybody normally says Sim Shalom at Mariv, but whatever it is. So that's just whatever that's. Yes, I'm sorry.
About us.
Chabad says Sim Shalom at Mariv too.
Yes.
Yes, you know why? Because I have here in my notes that the Ari, and Chabad, of course, follows Minhag Ari from Sfat in the 16th century. The Ari said only Sim Shalom. I'm not sure what the basis of that Minhag is. Maybe I'll try to look it up, but if you know, but okay, different minhagim. Listen, they have the same theme. I didn't actually prepare Shalom Rav, but Shalom Rav is really a shorter version of Sim Shalom. Shalom Rav Al Yisrael Amcha. Great peace, wonderful peace. Tasim. We should like Sim Shalom. Tasim Lolam. So it doesn't go into as much detail. Okay, so just let me pick up on that a little bit. So I was mentioning how Sim Shalom is a continuation of the third of the Birkas Kohanim. So we have in the middle of Sim Shalom, Barcheinu Avinu Kulanu Kechad B'Or Panacha. God should bless us with B'Or Panacha. We spoke last week how Moshe spoke to God face to face. God should bless us with the light of his face. The light is, of course, the symbolism of light in all cultures, is hope and optimism and all good things. And of course, B'Or Panacha means the divine light, whatever that means exactly. So we ask God to bless us with that. Now, then we say, Ki bior panecha natata lanu Hashem Elokeinu Torah chaim v'avat chesed ustacha bracha v'rachamim v'chaim b'shalom. That is one idea. Why should God bless us with Or Panecha? Because why should God bless us? You've already done that, God. Barcheinu Avinu, God, please bless us. That's a bakasha. We're asking God to bless us. We've already discussed, even though this last section of Shemon Esrei is praise, we do a lot of asking in praising. We don't just praise. All of Ritzei is asking. And Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, this is where we've had an Uktov L'chaim Tovim Kol B'nei Britecha, V'Sefer Chaim. So we do a lot of asking. So clearly, we say, obviously the whole Sim Shalom is asking. It's not praise. The praise is in the middle. Because God, with the radiance of your face, you gave us a living Torah. That's the minhag to say Sim Shalom, whatever. Ahavat Chesed, we spoke, we have to love to do kindness. And so here, but I spoke last week about Chesed, and when we do Chesed, we have to love we have to love doing Chesed. Of course, because everything we learn about God is for man, because we're created in man's image, but in God's image. But we're saying God gave us a Torah Chaim. God loves to do kindness to us. We're talking about God. Because you, God, gave us a Torah Chaim, the love of Chesed. God loves to do Chesed. Utstaka, bracha, v'rachamim, v'chaim, b'shalom. That's what you've done. And then we conclude, and please, God, now continue to bless the Jewish people, b'chol eidu, b'chol sha'ad, every moment with your blessings of peace. So this is all really that middle section is describing what God does to us. It is interesting, the Avat Chesed, and again, but we're talking about God does to us means what we have to do to other people. It's always like that, right? The most famous example is the Yud Gimel Midah, the Shem Hashem al Rachum B'chanu, Nerech Hafayim V'Rav Chesed V'Yemet, right? Mahu Rachum Apata Rachum. The same way God is merciful, we have to be merciful. The same way God is kind. There are two Gemaras. I didn't prepare them, but the one Gemara in Shabbat, we talk about the characters of God. We have to be merciful and kind and patient like God. And then the Gemara in Sota that says the same way God clothes the naked like he did by Abraham, we have to clothe the naked. The same way he visits this by Adam, God clothed the naked Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And then the same way God visits the sick like he did by Abraham, we have to visit the sick. And the same way, I'm missing one, I forget now, in the same one he buries Moshe, the dead, we have to bury the dead. There's one more I'm missing. Closing us, visiting the sick, bearing, I don't know, whatever. So we have to copy God. But that's what we're asking that. They're asking that God should, the Tov Beinecha, it should be good in your eyes, God, to bless us. Tov Beinecha, it's a prayer to God that you should do this goodness. So it reminded me of a concept we discussed a long time ago, is the idea of God praying. I don't know who remembers, or I don't, God, the Gemara, it's in, it's one of these, Ripley's Believe It or Not Gemara passages. And here, I'll share it with you. Just give me a second here. Okay. Tradition. Okay. Brachot. So the Gemara says like this: Amar Rav Yochanan, we did this a long time ago. Minayin she'akadosh baruch hu mitpalel. How do we know that God prays? This is like wow. Because if the idea of prayer is to ask, prayer means we have needs. The way Rav Soloveitchik understands prayer. The only point of prayer is we have needs, so we ask God for our needs. Before you ask God for our needs, you you praise him a little bit. So this simple explanation is okay. So God has needs, otherwise why is he praying? So what of course is even more amazing is the Gemara like doesn't the question no big deal. So like okay, yeah, how do we know God them? It's here. I'll tell you how. I will bring them. This is Yeshayahu, who God talking through Yeshayahu. I will bring them to my holy mountain, the Beit Hamikdash, and I will rejoice with them in my house of prayer, Beit Tfilati. So, of course, the simple meaning is the house of prayer for Ki Beiti Beit Tfilah Yikarei L'chol Amim, because my house is a house of prayer for all nations of the world. So, my house of prayer just means the place we go to pray to God. But the Gemara wants to interpret in this fantastical way. This like wow. The Gemara wants to say no, 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 no. It's an additional level. Of course, it also means it's where we go to pray. But God is also praying. In my house of prayer. So the Gemara is like, okay, big deal. God prays, that's wonderful. So then the Gemara wants to know, okay, what does he daven? Like I know I want to get God's Siddur. Okay, my matzli. What does he pray? So Amar Zutra, Bartuvi. It's very interesting. Like Rav Yochanan was one who quoted, he didn't necessarily know what God prayed. I don't know. It's just interesting. Why didn't Rav Yochanan say? I have no idea. So Amar Rav Zutra Bartuvi Amar Rav. Just to put it in perspective, Rav Yochanan is a first generation Israeli Amor, but he's quoting Rav Yossi, who's before him. I don't. Rav Yochanan and Rav lived approximately the same time. I think Rav Yochanan was a little older, but Rav lived in Babel. Rav Yochanan lived in Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Anyways, what does God pray? God prays you should have mercy on the Jewish people. Jewish people don't always worthy of mercy. So, I don't want to get angry at them. Let my mercy be more. And my mercy should be the one that wins. Rejoice with mercy. I should have pity, mercy. We discussed last week, rachamim probably means when you're not deserving. That's what it sounds like, just like a mother, a racham. A mother always has mercy on the kid, even if the kid is not worthy of mercy at all. That's so God has mercy on us. We're asking he should treat us like a mother treats a child. They should do more than they deserve. We know that. That's a very important halachic imperative for us, that we're supposed to not just follow the letter of the law. Sometimes the letter of the law, people fall through the cracks. The law cannot address all situations. The law cannot be fair 100% of the time. That's just Yikov Adin at the heart, the Talmud says. The law pierces the mountain. It doesn't take into account social factors, excuses, some of which are valid. And that's what Lifnim Mishur Hadin does. So the same way God does that, we have to do it. So we're asking God, I think, and we're asking God it should be good to you. In other words, we're asking God that his prayer should be answered. Like God should answer God's prayer, as funny as it's, I don't know, but it's really, again, it's a beautiful concept. And, if the Talmud wouldn't say it, it would be heresy to say such a thing. But I'm just quoting what it says in the Talmud. I think Kabbalistically, which I know nothing about, they'll say, God needs the Jewish people, but I don't know what that means. Well, I just found it interesting when I was looking up. So this is 7a in Record. The immediately prior Gemara, I don't know if it's meaningful, but I just thought it was interesting because this is in Sim Shalom. So that if you know someone's going to greet you, you should greet him first. To say Shalom, Sim Shalom. Shalom means peace, completeness. That's how we greet people. Shenamar Bake Shalom V'Radvehu, right? You have to seek peace, right? The Torah usually say Kimat, say if you happen to find a lost object, if you're doing this, if you're not doing this, if you have a flat roof on your house, you build a roof. But you don't have to have a flat roof. There's no mitzvah to build a roof with a flat roof. As I discussed, I don't know if anyone listened to my podcast this week, but I discussed there's no mitzvah to have tzitzis, to where it tells you don't have to. If you happen to have the Ber of Netzor, if you happen to have a four-corner garment, very nice, put on tzitzis. There's zero halacha that you have to have a four-corner garment, which is why minhag is in Ashkenazi communities outside the broyers is that single men don't wear a talit. Okay, you'll say they're wearing a talit katan, whatever. But of course, we go out of our way to do it. That's strange. I don't think anybody would say you're doing something nice if you build a house with a flat roof to put a fan. I don't think anybody says that. But tzitzis is so important. That's what I talk about a little bit. The white tzitzit in rabbinic literature is viewed with great importance, which is like a piece of blue thread on your, on your clothing if you happen to wear it. So that's the one exception to the rule. We run to do tzitzit even though there's really zero obligation. And that's nobody argues on that. I said that's why women don't wear tzitzit. That's how the Ramah quotes. The reason traditional women for 2,000 years have not worn tzitzit is because men don't have to wear tzitzit. All right, so the men go out of their way. Okay, they're out of their minds, but the women don't have to do that. But the Ramah writes very clearly, if a woman wants to, no problem. She can put on tzitzis, just like she takes a lulav, and here's the shofar. Beautiful, makes a bracha. That's what the Ramah writes. And then he sort of goes back a little. He said, nonetheless, our practice is not to do that. That's Yuhara. But okay, so that's you have today. Should we, obviously, it's still followed in most traditional circles. But I think if a woman walks into shul, like our biggest problem should be if a woman walks into shul wearing a talis. I know people would look at her like she's out of her mind, but it's really has a lot of basis in tradition. Again, I'm not getting into the politics and policies and all that stuff, but just halachically. But so most mitzvot, including bird hunting, there is no mitzvah to go bird hunting because you promised a long life to chase the mother bird away. Absolutely not. Kimatzeh. If you happen to go, ki karei, that's even if you happen to be, traveling and there's a mother bird, oh my God, and you're going bird hunting, send it away. The one exception is peace. Bake shalom viratvehu. The only thing we have to run after is peace. A beautiful idea we discussed last week. God's can find nothing else to contain his blessings except shalom. Lo matzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu kli machzik bracha. God could only find the vessel of peace. So here you have to run after shalom. And the Gemara is interpreting. I'll get to in the question in 1 second, Zeb. Not just as peace and no war, as greeting people, because shalom aleichem. So you have to run after people to greet them. But here it says only if you know people. We'll get that in a second. If somebody says good Shabbos to you walking the street and you don't answer him, oy vay vay vay. Maybe better don't go to shul. Better than meet somebody and not greet them. Nikra gazlan, you're a thief. You're a robber. You took away from the poor. A poor person can't give you anything. He can give you a greeting, a beautiful thing. Somebody greets you and you don't answer them. That's terrible. And I don't know. We out of towners. I shouldn't talk like this, but I know when the out of towners. When I came to YU, there was sort of you could tell who was an out of towner, who was a New Yorker. It might not be totally true, but I think maybe even the New Yorkers will know what I'm talking about. There seems to be, New York is so big, everybody's got 5,000 people. No, the out of town, whatever. Okay, but it's very important to say greeting people. So I just find that interesting that the shalom, that's the Gemara. Coincidence, they're whatever you want to take it. Coincidences, no coincidences, is right before the Gemara about God praying for peace, which is we're talking about the idea of peace. So if we want God to bring us peace and good things, so too we have to bring peace, i.e., and especially living in without a sovereign state. How do you bring peace to people? You make them feel good. How do you make people feel good? You greet people. Everybody knows. And the Gemara says about Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai that the Gemara sings off his praises. He was amazing. And then it says, Lo ikdim adam me'olam. I don't remember the exact expression. Nobody beat him to saying good morning. Afilu akum shabashuk. Even the idol worshiper. In other words, he walking in the street, even the idol worshiper. I'm sure many of you, I don't know if you've heard the story before, but Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, they have, I heard that I think it's in the book, not that I read the book, but Jonathan Rosenblum's book on Yaakov Kamenetsky. So when he moved to Muncie later on in his life, he lived near, what's the word, a convent where they have nuns, right? That's a convent, right? So apparently when he died, a number of the nuns came to pay a shiva visit.
A nunnery.
A nunnery. Okay, thank you. And they said that, they came because this old man, he was the only one who would say hello to us in the morning. Like when he passed by, he would always be, the yeshiva, I'm going to greet a of Avodah Zarah. I can't do that. So that's what Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, the one who saved Judaism during the time of the Roman conquest, said shalom. So it's really important. So we talk about sim shalom. We praying to God. It's really a prayer. God, you shone your light upon us. You gave us a wonderful Torah. You gave us tzedakah. You taught us how to do tzedakah, bracha, shalom. Now, God, it should be in your eyes. You should do that to us. Israel should do that to us. How do you do that? Well, we should do that to others, right? God's going to pray. He has to pray. So we have to pray that we're going to do that to others, and one simple thing we can do is to greet people. That's so. I don't know if you want to take one. It's not normally how, and it's not normally how I would sort of. I'm not saying that's the main, like when they put the bracha of Sim Shalom, but I think one of the ideas we should think of when we say Sim Shalom is the idea of greeting people. That's what the Gemara compares Shalom to greeting people, and if not, you're a thief, which is the opposite of peace, right? Fighting people, right? To steal from people. So that's what the Gemara says. So if you don't say peace, so please, when you go to shul this morning, it's, I mean, I like to quote the halakha. I'm sure we discussed it when we were in Kriyat Shema. It's amazing halakha. And I don't know why people don't do this anymore. And I don't, whatever. The halakha that, yeah, hold on. One second. Just let me finish the one sentence. The halacha is that if somebody walks into shul and you're in the middle of saying Kriyat Shema, there are slight details, not important for now, you can greet them. You're talking to God, like Abraham Avinu. God came to visit Abraham, and Abraham saw three idol worshippers, right? He afraid they were worshiping idols, which is why he washed their feet, right? That's what Rashi says. Three idol worshippers walking in the street. He's talking to God, and he says, God, I'm putting you on call waiting. We don't have that anymore. But you remember call waiting days? God, I'm putting you on call waiting. I don't know why we don't have that anymore, but whatever. It's good. And putting you on call waiting to greet them. So that's unbelievable. Yeah, Steve. So that's what seems shalom. Yeah.
I had a quick question. Who was the old man who you said greeted the nun?
Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky.
Yaakov Kamenetsky. Okay.
Yeah, he was, listen, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, he was Rav in Toronto before he was famous. I think I've mentioned this story in the past. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky learned in Slobodka. I think I hope I'm not misquoting this story. I heard in his name that, when he was in the Kollel in Slobodka, they had like 11 people. How many people learned in yeshivas in Europe? Like one in 5,000. So he said that was much better. When you have 5,000 people in yeshiva, you don't have any excellence. Because if everybody gets in, well, I don't want to say Harvard. If everybody gets into, what's a good school? University, I don't know. Name a good school. If everybody gets into that school, the school isn't such a good school. To produce greatness, you need elite. You need both, but you need elite. And when everybody can get into Kollel, the Kollel level will always drop. And Rav Yaakov said they had 11 people in the Kollel, so you knew you're in the minor leagues. Like there are only 25 players on a baseball team. You know there are 1,000 people willing to take your spot, and you better shape up. If everybody's in, so what's the big deal? There's no incentive. But Rav Yaakov was a Rav in Toronto, I believe. Tova, you're still here? What year? 38, 39? I don't know exactly. But my grandmother, who got married in 1931, told me she listen, my grandmother got married in 31. The Depression, she lost her mother in the influenza epidemic of 1919. When COVID hit, I was like, and her and her mother, I didn't realize my great grandmother was pregnant, and her mother came to visit her in 1919, and they both died within 3 days of each other in the influenza. So my grandmother lost her mother and grandmother at the age of 9, and whatever. So she went to business, whatever. Their father had a business, so she grew up young, early, whatever the word is. So she used to say when she got married, but what women were learned in the 1930s in Toronto. So, but she was religious, pious, whatever. So she would go to Rav Yaakov to ask Shaila Tova, right? Ask a Shaila, on a chicken. Those were the olden days. And she said, Rav Yaakov would say, she didn't know who he was. She knew he was the rabbi, Rabbi Kamenetsky. And she would say, Mrs. Friedman, how are you? He would schmooze with her. How you doing? Greet her, And the Rav who followed, the Rav before was not, I don't want to mention his name, but he was also an important Rav. He was, gruff, kosher, treif, go eat it, whatever. But that was Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. And then, of course, he came to New York. So he was the one. He was known to be have a sensitivity to things, as you're supposed to. Slobodka was a Musar yeshiva where they taught these things, not just Talmud. So they emphasized these ideas. Okay, Zeb, I think you had a comment you wanted to make before, and I interrupted you. No, am I correct? Not correct? Okay.
I think he left Toronto because he said it was Trafe.
Toronto was Trafe.
Yeah, I think at the
What do you
time
mean?
he felt it was not a
You
place
don't
for a
remember him.
Torah.
I mean, it's before your time too, but maybe your
Yeah,
parents.
that's what I heard. He left. He said why he left. Apparently,
This I don't know. Okay, I don't know.
His second wife was a woman from Toronto.
That's right. He Copstick. His second wife
Right.
is Gary
Yeah.
Copstick, who I worked with when I my first
Yeah,
accounting
yeah.
job here in Toronto. I'm sorry if us Torontonians are just having our own private discussion here. That's right. His second wife was from Toronto, and the grandkids are like modern Orthodox, whatever.
I met him. I mean, he was very approachable. I met him in Florida, Rabbi Kamenetsky. When I
Uh-huh.
went with our parents down to Florida, we went to visit him. Yeah, he was very friendly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sim Shalom. That's what it's all about. So when we say Sim Shalom, have in mind to greet people. That's the Shalom we can do. Of course, have in mind peace for Israel and God should bless with peace. Both are true. There's the small and the big. Okay. I think now, I thought I titled the shir Elokai Netzor, but just the last few minutes. Now we're sort of at the end, or that's the debate. And then when we finish, we'll do sort of why we do the order. There's please God, it'll take us still a few more weeks. But okay, no, of course, there's way more parts in the Siddur, just the Shmon Esrei part. Okay, so Elokai Netzor. So where does this come from? God protect our speech. Elohai, our God. Netzor Lishon Chamei Ros Vatecha Medaber Mirma. It's not it's basically the quote. It's not exactly the quote. I'm sorry. From? I can't hear you. It's all muffled. I'm sorry. Okay, so if there is, okay, so let's go the simple way. Let's share the Gemara in Brachot that says as follows. There's a Gemara Brachot, page 16b, I believe. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. So the Gemara has a whole series of things that say, it's very funny comment. Rabbi Elazar, Batar de Messiah Slute. When Rabbi Elazar finished davening, i.e., he finished the Shmon Esrei, he said the following. It sounds like after he finished praying, he prayed some more. That's what it almost sounds like, because it's a prayer. Here it's Omafanach Hashem Elokeinu, may be the will of the God of our fathers, or no, he doesn't say God of our fathers, our God. Shetashkein Pureinu Abba B'Achva B'Shalom B'Reit. That God should give us love and friendship. Sim Shalom. If you want to mute yourself, please. The Tarbeg Vulenu B'Talmidim. We should have lots of students, etc. That's what he said. Okay. And then Rav Yochanan, when he finished davening, this is what he would say. Here at some of we shouldn't be embarrassed. Look, the tzitz is like to take a look, like a peek through. See our suffering, our embarrassment. God, gird yourself in mercy. Betit kasel, like a talis, you're strained, titatef, right? This is talis, b'chasidecha, etc. Rav Zera, when he finished davening, but he would say following: we shouldn't sin, we shouldn't be embarrassed. Rav Chia, when he finished, he said Torah should be our way of life, etc. Rav, this is the most famous one. Rav, we're going to say tomorrow. Rav, when he finished davening, we all recognize this, of course, from Birchas. You know what? Hold on. I'm just going to have to mute and do that when I'm speaking. Okay, sorry about that. Let me go back here. Okay, so we all recognize this, of course, from what we say on Rosh Chodesh benching. But it's not Rosh Chodesh benching. It's Rav's tefillah that he said apparently every day. I don't know, every day. The Gemara, or who knows? But Rav Batar de Slota, when he finished davening, he would say this. It's a beautiful tefillah. We decided to say it once a month. And then we make the mountain, the Chaim Shol, Yerachet, Pushak Lima, Osher B'chavod, Torah, etc., etc. And then we have this one, Rabbi, when he finished, so this we do say. Yiratzom of Tatzilenu Ezei Panim. I don't know if everybody
That's
says it.
Kriyat Shema Lamita.
It's also Birchat HaShachar, right after Gomel Chasadim Tovim Lamo Yisrael. That I
Right.
don't, and most shuls they don't say it. I mean, at least the Chazan doesn't say it. He says Gomel Chasadim Tovim Lamo Yisrael. Then there's a little paragraph which I do say every day. It's a beautiful little tefillah. That it's here. It's just quoted word for word.
After Berchot HaShachar.
Yeah, it's after Birkat HaShachar. If you look in the Koran Siddur that I have here, page 33 in the weekday Koran whatever, it's Magerman Siddur. And okay, and what's interesting, Rav Safra, when he finished davening, he would say, Shalom b'pamal yishalmata, it should be peace upstairs and the heavens and here. Bein Talmidim Moskim b'Torah. That's very interesting. Rabbis should get along with one another. We know, unfortunately, how often they fight. And jealousy, we discussed last week. Yivarach Hashem v'yishmerecha. The Netziv says sometimes the guarding that we need is that Torah can make you arrogant. It happens, unfortunately, we know. And often, they say, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim. How do you know the rabbis had a sense of humor? Because they say, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Balam. That's not nice, but, the rabbis increase peace. Or they said, Shenemar. They have to quote a verse. If it's obvious, you don't have to quote a verse. Unfortunately, that's the role of Talmidei Chachamim is to promote peace. And when they're not promoting peace, there's something wrong in their in the Torah they're doing. No, that's what can I tell you? And it goes on. Rabbi Alexander says we should we should stand in God's presence. Now, what's fascinating is you'll notice. Here's another one that we all recognize. I hope from Yom Kippur. Rabbi Elokai Lachon Sarti Geinel Kedah. We say this in the Elah. I believe only in the Elah of Yom Kippur. Afarni b'chaya, I'm nothing, I'm a nobody. Kal v'chomer b'mitati, yehi ratzon shaloach ta'ot. In the Elah, So now, again, this has nothing to do with Ne'ilah, and that has nothing to do with Rosh Chodesh. Our tradition copied these beautiful tefillot and put it in different parts of the Siddur, and some are not. Some didn't make it in, luck of the draw. And then we have this one, Marbrei de Ravina. Marbrei de Ravina, the son of Ravina, when he finished davening, Ravina's late. This is a later Amor. We're talking, 4th, 5th century. Elokai Netzor l'shanai meiras v'dam edaber mirma v'leinim shitiyom. Notice it's basically nafshi chafar l'tiyeh. Okay, we'll come back to all this, but I just want to point out Tatzilenu mi pegara. That's only in the Saksvard. I don't know if anybody says mi ishara'a. It's very interesting. Our Siddur didn't put that in. I guess I'm happy. All right. Save us from a bad woman. Mi ishara'a mi kol ra'ad mikrashot lavol olam. We don't say it's almost word for word. And this is where this idea, why exactly this was picked, I don't know. I have to look, maybe do a little bit more research. And that's it. This is the last. We saw a series of like 10 of these that when he would finish davening, and that's where Elokai Netzor does. So you see right away, it's not part of the Shmon Esrei. Batar, when he finished davening, he would daven. He would say this, but it's the truth. So I think, even that idea that it seems like the Shmona Esrei we've discussed many times have prayers from the heart, and we can't tell people what to pray. You pray what you feel like praying. Otherwise, I tell you what to pray. It's not from your heart. But we had no choice. No exile. We had no choice. It was impossible, and people wouldn't know what to do. So the rabbi said, "Here's davening. This is what you got to pray for." And we made it silent so you can add your own prayers, but that's not like ideal. Really, it should be. But okay, what can we do? It's impossible in another way. So these tefillot, the Shmon Esrei, that doesn't necessarily express your personal, oomph. So it seems to me that they davened, of course. The Anshe Knesset goes said, you got to say the Shmon Esrei. They said the Amida, and then they add a prayer that reflected what's in their heart. Now that, of course, will change from day to day. But the idea, these ideas somehow, and I can't, I don't know how, but maybe some, each one of these typified who this rabbi was. In other words, this rabbi, after he finished davening, this is what I'm going to pray for. This is me. This is my avodah shabalev, that if I, could make up on my own, this is what I'm saying. So he would daven what Anshe Knesset Gola said, and then they would add in the Elokai Netzor. I mean, they'd add whatever they added in. And I don't know, I have to look a little bit more. Our tradition decided to take the this last one of Elokai Netzor. It could be because speech, I don't know. Speech is really, we're asking God now that we begin with speech and then we move to other themes. But in a certain, first of all, speech, you could argue, someone argue, is that Tselem Elohim. The man is created with Tselem Elohim. What makes man unique is our ability of speech. Other animals can communicate a little bit, although I'm not sure people knew that in the Middle Ages. But we know today that animals do communicate, although not through speech. We also are the only organism that can write. We can communicate, after a person is no longer living. You can write a book. We read books of people, all the time who aren't alive. So we can, that's manifest, that's part of our Tselem Elohim. So you could say that like that, speech, that's what God, that represents, our godliness. You can also say that speech was the first sin of man. I know you're going to tell me he's eating the, whatever it was, the fruit, whatever he ate, not the apple, whatever, fine, okay. But it was really when God said, what did you do? It was they putting blame. The fact that they ate from the fruit, that God would have forgiven. I think most of the commentaries assume that had they admitted what they did was wrong, going to a big deal. So it's a little bit of a big deal, but God can forgive. God forgave sort of Cain for killing Hevel. He said no one's going to punish you. So it's much worse than eating a fruit. So, but it was the shifting of blame. I didn't do it. The denial, all that whole rigmarole. And so in a sense, I don't know exactly why, but that this is the one that our sages picked. And I don't imagine it wouldn't be the end of the world if somebody wants to say Birkas Chodesh every day, like, that's it's okay. That's what Rab did every day. So whatever, but our minhag and our Siddurim is like that. We're very beholden to the Siddur. But really, I don't know that's, I don't know, I don't get into trouble here, but I don't know if anybody has composed new ones or modern ones, but that's the idea, that it's after the Tefillah. Now, but that's halachically, this has a big discussion. How many people say, because I generally do not, but not that it matters, but you notice they put in small little letters, Yehi Ratzon, Hashem Tzuriv V'Goli, right? They put that in. You say, before. It's said, you say it twice. In other words, it's the last ending right before, right before Oseh Shalom Rav, we ask that God should Yehi L'Ratzon Imrifi. We'll get back to that probably next week. That God should it should be to your favor. Yehi L'Ratzon. God should find favor in Imrei Pi, in the words that we say. That Yoni Bi L'Fanecha, and the thoughts of our heart, Hashem Tzuriv, God, you're our rock and redeemer. So some people say that also before. We say that right before Oseh Shalom B'Mermav. And they have it in little letters, they put in little letters, you do say it, you don't say it, like if it's big letters, that's important, right? Some Siddurim actually do that. They put the 1, 3, and 5 hallelujahs in big letters, 2 and 4 in small letters, because it become like the shul, 2 and 4 are less important, whatever it is. So it's in small letters, and okay. So why do some people say it, and why do some people not say it? Anybody know why is that sort of, optional, if I can use that word? So
Yeah.
it really has to do with when is the tefillah over.
Maybe
Susan,
because
you are muted. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Maybe
Now I hear
because
you. Yeah.
the real end of the Amidah is Sim Shalom before Elokai Netzor. So, and the Chazan always says Yiratzon.
Right. No, that's not true. I would say 90% of the Chazanim I hear, maybe in Queens they say it, but where I daven, I would say it's almost never in Toronto that the Chazan say Yehi Ratzon. Anybody can confirm what I say? Once in a blue moon, the Chazan says Yehi Ratzon, but most of the minyanim I daven in, I guess the 3 main minyanim I daven at, almost never. Interesting, interesting. Right. It really has to do with where does the Shemona Esrei. Now, the simple pshat and the way we've explained it the whole way, how the Ramah explains it, is it ends at Hamavarechet Amo Yisrael Bashalom, and Yehi Ratzon is a break to it's that's to mark that our tefillah is over, and then we say after tefillah, Elokai Netzor is after tefillah. This has halachic implications for what happens if you're davening Shemona Esrei and the chazan gets kedusha. I know we'll get into the details now, and that seems to be the correct or the simple the way we're explaining it, and the way I think how the Ramah rules in Shulchan Aruch. Shemona Esrei is over. Hamavarach Amo Yisrael Bashalom, finished. And now, Yehi Ratzon, and now we can say the additional tefillot, whatever you want to say. And the minhag not to say it is we're assuming, just like Hashkivenu will, a lot of things they weren't originally there, but they get included as the tefillah. Elokai Netzor kind of became an extension of the Shemona Esrei. You're not going to change everything. You're right. But when Chazal or when the Siddur was composed, I actually don't know. Something that to remind myself to look up. Was Elokai Netzor, when did that get added to the Shemona Esrei? Like I don't think it's not included, and I'm pretty sure in the Gemara and Megillah when talks about Shemona Esrei, it's not here. It's obviously came at a later date. I don't know. I'm going to try to look up historically when did Elokai Netzor get added. But once it got added, it sort of became part of the Shemona Esrei. It's an extension, and then so we're not going to say Yehi Ratzon until we finish Elokai Netzor. That becomes part of the Amidah also. And I think those are the two customs. People, they may not know why they do that, but that's why some people do say, I have no idea how common it is. That's why I asked, who says it when they finish this one? I don't know, somehow I was brought up, I never said it. The only time I say it is if the chazan's about to say Kedusha, and I'm not finished, and I'm right at I'll say it, because then you can answer Kedusha more than if not. At least that's how they present the halacha. Okay, anyways, please go. We can pick up on this theme next week and go through the Elokai Netzor. But this idea of speech being first. The other thing I'll say, right, is you know what? I'll do that next week. Why we begin Shemona Esrei with Hashem Svatai Tiftach, because the Gemara puts it together. Hashem Svatai Tiftachu Piyagiti Techa is also not part of the Shemona Esrei, and there's really halachic concern. Are you allowed to say such a thing? You're not supposed to speak at all. Our custom is, it's a debate a little bit, but our custom is not to answer Amen. I think between Gaal Yisrael and the Shemona Esrei. So how do we add in some extra verse out of there? And the same thing at the end. We have that same idea. So that we'll discuss. The Gemara puts the two together. Hashem Svatai Tiftach and Yehilu Ratzon Mifi all becomes the sort of the bookends of the Amidah. Okay. Let's just do a quick review, and they'll take if any questions. We discussed how our Parshat Hashavua works, and we can have these odd years where we read Naso before Shavuos, and like I said, if Rosh Hashanah falls on a Thursday and a Friday, you have a lot of extra Shavuot. You've got 39 weeks. It's a leap year, so you just have no choice. There are not enough Parshat to fill up before Shavuot. Okay, and then we went through the beautiful essay of the Rav, and thank you, Yocheved. I don't know if you put it back in this week too, in the chat box, but you can look it up.
No, but I put something else.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Just go to Google and put a tribute to the Rebbetzin of Talna, and it'll come up. Or go tradition. I think tradition online. I think it's 1977, and you can see the article. But I read to you what I consider the most beautiful part. He learned from his mother the most important thing of life, to feel the presence of the Almighty. It's the mother more than the father who transmits our Messiah. Yeah, the father teaches you technical details, but technical details are less important than the grandeur of Judaism. Don't learn the forest from the tree, right? So that's the complaint sometimes, that people don't get so focused on halacha that sometimes you lose the big picture. Not that it's not important, but you have to see the goal and what you're doing. Anyways, it's a beautiful essay. The Rav, of course, was the greatest maspid of all time. Nobody gave eulogies like Rav Soloveitchik. Unbelievable. And some of you they're famous. And of course, when he died, Norman Lamb said the only person who could give a hesped for the Rav is the Rav. There's nobody alive who's qualified to give a hesped for the Rav. The Rav had he would come up, dream these unbelievable concepts he came up with. And anyways, by the way, the best exposition of Das Torah, which the Rav later on rejected, is the Rav's hesped for his uncle. that sits, the Kohen Gadol, that the rabbi is not just the spiritual leader, he's the political leader. That's sort of das Torah philosophy, that the rabbis, the Gedolim decide everything. The Rav gave the best sort of exposition of that view, which he rejected. He rejected after World War II. He says God, whatever. Okay.
Excuse me, Rabbi Kelman. I think that was for Rav Chaim Eiser.
No, well, I don't think so. I think it was
Sits
for
in
his
the
uncle.
Choshen.
That sits in the Choshen. Yeah,
That
that's
was Rav
Rav
Chaim
Chaim
Eiser.
Ozer, maybe
Yeah, in 1940, when he was still
Yeah.
a card-carrying Aguda member.
Yeah. Then
Yeah.
he saw the light. Oh, oops. I'm gonna get into trouble. But okay. Yeah, but listen, that's the Rav's famous line that God paskins in history when it comes to Hashkafa. I mean, I think whatever. Obviously, I think everybody here assumes the state of Israel is part of God's revelation. I'm not saying it's a Chata de Gula. That I don't go. I'm from the non-messianist Zionist, like Rav Soloveitchik was and Rav Reines was, as opposed to the Rav Kook Zionists. That's the split in Zionism. The Rav Kook Zionism is 90% today, but I'm one of the 10%ers who don't see Zionism in messianic light, and that's how Rav Soloveitchik felt, and that's how Rabbi Reines, the founder of the Mizrahi, felt. That's how many people used to feel. But today, whatever, that's for a whole other discussion. Anyways, but that was Rav Chaim Ozer's. Okay, thank you. But he was an amazing Maspid, really amazing. Okay, then we talked about why we say Shem Shalom, the Minhag Torah Chaim. Perhaps that will explain this minhag to say it at Mincha time, but we explained that it's Hashem who granted us through the light of His face, right? That's the, of course, continuation of the second of Birchas Kohanim, right? Sim Shalom is the Yasem Lecha Shalom, but we twice say, right? Barcheinu v'inu b'yor panecha ki b'yor panecha, twice, and that's of course Ye'er Hashem. What's that? Ye'er Hashem paneh v'lecha. That's the idea. Also continuing in the Sim Shalom, we talked about what God praised. And then it should be good for you, God, to do good for us. And that's basically the Gemara in Brachot. I think it's a very parallel that God prays. We're asking God to answer His own prayer, so to speak. This fantastic Gemara that Beit Tefillati, my house of prayer, and that God prays that He should have pity on the Jewish people. A beautiful idea. And of course, it's a message for us that we should have pity on other people, even if they're not worthy. And we do lifni mishur adin, and we do go beyond the level. It's not always easy. Of course, not always easy, but that's what we're supposed to do. And then we just began Elokai Netzor. We said this is an add-on. The Gemara is like 10 add-ons, different people, some of which are being incorporated in the Ela, Birkas Shachar, Birkas HaChodesh, some of which people have never heard of unless they learn it in Daf Yomi, and then the one we do is the last one presented there about Elokai Netzor, and we'll pick up some why that we started to begin speech, and we'll please God pick up on that next week. Okay, thank you. Let's see, any questions? Oh, yeah, I see. The Rav's early teacher was a Chabad teacher. Absolutely. That's why the Rav had a warmth of Chabad, and he talks about how on Rosh Hashanah, he always talks Malchut, how the Chabad person, gave him that idea of the coronation of God that you can't get in prayer. It really shows you something very important, how important it is to expose people to different views of learning and Judaism. When you're brought up in like the narrow confines, like most of us today, you go to the same schools, everybody have to have, and they're the same. There's no community shuls anymore. We've spoken about that a few times. And even in the community shul that they have, their 19 minyanim on Shabbos morning, and everybody goes to their 14 different camps because this camp does say this, and then you go to yeshiva in Israel. Every yeshiva's got their own thing, and they're never exposed to beyond their little narrow confines of understanding of Judaism. And see, the Rav was enriched. I mean, they fired him when Rav Moshe found out that their teachers, they fired him on the spot. But that's really a sad, I think that's unfortunate in a sense. It was good the Rav got exposed to Chabad. And it's good for Jews today to get exposed. I always say one of the things on our trip, please God, in 2 weeks, I don't know what's going on now, but we're supposed to be in France. And from here is not such a big deal. We have people coming from Israel in theory. Who knows what's going to be. But our trip with Dr. Shapiro, I've never been to France, we're going to be in Provence. So I say all these trips, one of the things I've learned from these trips is, you see the breadth, how different communities have different customs. You think, the way us Ashkenazic Jews do it, that's the only way. It's so not true. You travel and you see different communities that have been around for 1,000 years, observing totally different customs. They do things totally different. I was at Breuer's last week. I know I spoke fast. But I never knew why. Just last Friday night, I found out I was in Breuer's last Shabbos, and we were in New York. So they do Kabbalah Shabbos verse by verse. The Chazan says verse 1, you say verse 2, he says 3. So you only say half of Kabbalah. I mean, you listen. And it's quick. It's very quick. It's a nice tune. They have their own nusach. He goes, L'chuna Rana Hashem, not really, and you quickly add Nikma Napetodah, and he just answers, and they go through it. So I never knew why they did that. So I knew that Rav Hirsch, L'chadodi, Kabbalah Shabbos, Frankfurt was the last place it came to. I mean, you have to think about it. The 15th century, not 16th century, they come up with the idea of Kabbalah Shabbos. It's a new idea, and it catches on. It's very unusual. Caught on in the whole world, but it took time, and they were very mystical. They were Kabbalistic. They're all Kabbalists in Sfat. Rav Yosef Karo, they're all Kabbalists. The Ari, who we mentioned before, and Rav Hirsch was very not Kabbalistic at all. And so it came to L'chun Rana. Kabbalah Shabbos arrived only in the time of Hirsch, apparently, in Frankfurt. This is what somebody told me in Breuer's last week in Shul, because I asked him, I said, why do they have this custom? I never understood why. So he said when Rav Hirsch introduced Kabbalah Shabbos, he didn't want it to have any mystical connotations. He didn't want to connect it to the Ari and Sfat. So he said, we're going to say Tehillim. You're allowed to say Tehillim whenever you want. These are prakim in Tehillim. So I don't know. It's very interesting. So I don't know if that's, maybe there are other things. But that's what somebody told me in Shul last week. So they did it as saying Tehillim. By the way, they also, Mizmor L'David, they don't stand for Mizmor L'David. They also do Pasuk. They do L'Chadodi. You can't say L'Chadodi is saying Tehillim. So I don't know. But that's sung by the Chazan and the choir. Also very interesting. They repeat words, which, in Orthodoxy today, you can't repeat words. That's like a no-no. But I'm assuming this is part, because it's not really part of the davening. So who cares? You repeat the words, anyways. So that's just very interesting. But you see even here, it's very nice to be exposed. I like to go when I'm in places to daven in different shuls. In Toronto, I don't do that very often. But, when I travel, it's nice to see how different minhagim. And I don't want to say it humbles you a little bit. You learn, there are other shitas. Listen, I know I'll get into trouble, but my background, I think it's important to be exposed to Reform and Conservative Judaism also. There's, as Rav Lichtenstein wrote many times, there are very serious Reform Jews and Conservative Jews. Unfortunately, maybe not as many as we would like, but there are people who take their Jews, and they're, as Rav Lichtenstein said, they're seeking God, some of them more than we are. And a lot of them, so there's what to be learned. The Rav Lichtenstein writes this in many, many places. You read this, Adam Persiker's, Yocheved, if you want to pull up Adam Persiker's article on the fragmentary Judaism, I don't know if you know that article of Rav Lichtenstein, where he quotes really how Rav Lichtenstein's view towards non-Orthodoxy. And it's really quite powerful and quite positive. Yes, we have serious differences, and he doesn't slouch over them, but we also have many, many things in common and many things we can learn from each other. I think it's important. Anyways, okay, I don't have to give you any my speeches, but I do think it's really, to point out, the Rav's early teacher was a Chabadnik, and I think that's a very positive thing, even though that was a total mistake. Working by the Rav's Hesped, okay, like I say, look it up online, tradition online. Here, maybe I can put it in the...
I just did.
Again. Oh, you just did. Thank you very much.
Someone asked. So.
Thank you. Worry and apprehension sanctify the state of Israel. The latest video of the Rav by Dr. Lustiker. This I have not seen in Yiddish. Oh. Okay, I don't know Yiddish, but subtitles will help. Okay, thank you for that. I assume that's a video. Saying Shem Shalom, because I mentioned Torah Chaim doesn't expire. It's only said a Shabbat Mincha in Israel. That would apply for every day as well. In other words, but we read Torah at Shachrit. So in other words, you say right after Torah reading. We don't read the Torah at Mincha. So we say Shalom Rav. In other words, the only time we read the Torah at Mincha is on Shabbos afternoon. So since we just read this Torah 2 minutes ago, we're going to say Sim Shalom. That's the explanation I saw. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's such a fantastic explanation. You can argue because it says Torah Chaim and we read the Torah, it's not the be all and end all. But okay, that's the explanation I saw quoted, and whatever. I'm maybe there are other explanations I'm just not aware of. Hopefully somebody somebody can enlighten me. But yeah, why they say, because the standard minhag was really not to say it at Shalom Mincha. And in Nusach Ashkenaz in America, they don't say Sim Shalom at Mincha. They say only Shalom Rav. So I don't know, but they do a lot of things differently in Israel. I don't know if the Gra had anything to do with it. It was okay. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky sent his daughters to modern Orthodox schools. That's very interesting. Where in New York, I mean, his sons probably went to school in Toronto even. I don't know where, and there was no day schools then. Listen, we're talking about the Rebbitzin of the Talmud Rebbitzin. So before, so apparently their son, Rav Yitzchak Kursky, went to somebody told me before. I always get it wrong. Boston Latin, what's it called? Some fancy private school in Boston, non-Jewish private school. That's where they sent him. Amazing. This is like the 1940s, I would guess. So there was Maimonides and Boston, whatever it's called. And apparently they said, I can send this, essentially said, listen, if after the years that we've given it in our home, if he's going to leave Judaism because he's exposed to some non-Jewish, classmates, then, it's very weak. That's an attitude you don't hear. Like, if a kid goes off to Derek, quote unquote, at a secular college, it's not the secular college's fault. A kid who's back from yeshiva in Israel should have enough Yiddishkeit that he can deal with being in a secular college and not become non-observant. I'm not saying they should or they shouldn't go. I'm just saying, like, you can expose people. If not exposing people means you're afraid. It means if you're afraid, that means your principles are not very strong. They're very weak. If you train somebody very strong, yes, some people are weak, can't be trained. So you have to know who they are. But you're supposed to train people. Okay, I don't know. But yeah, I am interested. Also, Yechav, which schools he sent to Rav Yaakov, I don't know. But listen, I don't want to start mentioning names, but because they're still alive and teaching in prominent institutions, very prominent rabbis who went to schools that they would never send their kids to in a million years. But I won't say it online. I don't want to embarrass them. But, it was a different world. 1937, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky took up a rabbinic post. That's what I said. All right, Congregation Torah's MS, right. Thank you very much. He led a fetching yeshiva and evening school in Toronto, addressing a lack of Torah education. Who's writing? Oh, Morris. Rabbi Kamenetsky was deeply concerned that his children's moral spiritual development might suffer. So that's why my uncle left Toronto in 1950. Okay, right. I heard Elokai Netzor is called Tfilah Char Tfilah. Oh, there you go. We'll come back to that. Thank you, Susan. Okay, yeah, correct. It's Tfilah after Batar Dematzeh. Right, it is in singular. Our rabbis instruct the chazan to say it. Okay, there you go. Very good. Who's your rabbi again? Why, I forget. Why, I should know this. Who's your rabbi again?
Judah Kerbel.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, he spoke for us on the parsha. Maybe I met him once, but yeah. Okay, so that's Queens Jewish Center, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's Adam Ferziker's article on Rav Lichtenstein too. Oh, and where's the article on Chud Rebbetzin of Talmud? Thank you very much. Okay, everybody, have a Shabbat Shalom. It should be Shalom for the Jewish people. Aleinu v'Kol Yisrael Amecha. And he's got. By the way, this week we also have a new class starting. Rabbi Yosef Slotnick from who's a Rebbe in Yeshivat Malei Gilboa. Where my son learned 2 years ago. This year my son left Israel last Sunday to go to Camp Sloan. So he left Israel Sunday, and he was debating whether to go just the second month or the first month, but because he's going the first month. Anyways, that's one of the few camps that have all of the staff. I understand camps are really struggling to find staff because so much of their staff comes from Israel. But Camp Stone starts earlier than all the other camps because they do 2 4-week sessions, whatever. So their staff was here already, pretty much. But on the other hand, there's all these American kids who are going on all these programs to Israel who aren't going. So that's what I hear. They're trying to recruit the Americans to whether it's Balagan, what can I say? Okay, we should hear good news. But anyways, Rabbi Slotnick, who is stuck in New York, who is one of the Rosh Yeshiva there is who is starting a 4-part series on Pirkei the Rav Elazar, which is about the Rabbi Natan, which is sort of an expansion of Pirkei Avot. That's going to be Wednesday, I believe, Wednesday at 1 p.m. I did send out one email about it already, but send out another email. That'll be a 4-part series. I'm sure. I don't know. I think Rav Lichtenstein once gave a shir of us the Rabbi Natan, but it's not something that is commonly learned. But it's should be very interesting. Okay, and then we have our regular Shir Rabbi Leiptag. It's the beginning on Sunday morning, and everybody well, and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you very much.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.